How the presence of different colors in Joker helps to predict the twists and outcome of each scene. How do colors tell us who is an ally and who is an enemy? Which dog did Joker remember at the end of the movie? Stay tuned to know the secret idea of Joker that nobody understood, and much more. Before we get deep into the color scheme of a Joker, it's important to understand that this movie breaks all the established rules of superhero movies. After all, Joker is not about hope and good guys with super abilities, but about a conflict between a regular person's internal thoughts with the external cruel society that breaks him down. Those two opposite powers are represented through the complementary colors, which are basically opposite sides of a color wheel: yellow and purple, blue and orange, red and green. Usually complementary colors are used in films to establish depth in a scene, but what makes them great in Joker is that those opposite sides of a spectrum are perfectly used to show how two sides of a character world interact with each other.
Gotham's lost its way.
First primary color of Joker is blue. More often it is associated with things related to life, like a blue sky or a sea, and stereotypically is seen as a color of good, compared to the evilness of a red that brings fire, blood and death. However, in Joker, blue is different. It's cold. Not a regular sky blue, but more a fluorescent cyan color. Mostly you can see this color be frequently used in the first act of a movie, and that's because it represents a society that surrounds Arthur. Essentially, it's hard to not notice the dominance of this cyan coldness in the major part of a film, since it's everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Here, 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 and so on. Actually, there is so much blue that it almost makes you suffocate, the same way Arthur is strangled by the people of Gotham City. Even in the very first two shots of a movie, we can see the blue lights coming out of the window, as well as a blue tear on Arthur's face. The movie has just begun, but it already tells us that every time we see blue color, it's going to work against Arthur, causing him pain, struggles and tears, and most likely the source of this blue suppressing power will be the city itself. In the next scene, which is also color graded into blue tones, we can see that kids who took Arthur's signs are all wearing blue outfits. This beginning scene of kids beating up Arthur is very indicative. Our brain tends to make assumptions based on what we've seen before, and that's why when later in the movie those three guys wearing the blue costumes are introduced to the audience, we subconsciously connect them to the feeling of danger and physical pain. Besides a city, we frequently see cyan tones whenever Arthur feels devastated. For example, the office room of his therapist, who never actually listens to him and doesn't care about his obvious struggles and problems. No wonder that the first time we see Arthur visiting her, Arthur cries and painfully laughs. Nothing has changed, since he is still surrounded by an indifferent, egoistic person. Or the hospital room where his mom ended up being in critical condition, taking away from Arthur probably the only person that was truly caring about him. At least until he discovered the unfortunate truth about her. Oops.
It's a fucking comedy.
It's entirely blue, saturated more than ever before. However, personally I believe the best use of this color was during this scene, when the influence of a city on him is the largest. According to the Joker cinematographer Lawrence Sher, this scene was deliberately shot during a magic hour, more known as a blue hour. Basically, the blue hour refers to the phase of a twilight when the sun is so far below the horizon that the light's blue wavelengths dominate on the sky. It's hard to capture this part of a day because it's short and lasts usually for 20 minutes, but if you could do so, you would end up capturing how different colors contrast with the all-pervading ambient blue lights. In terms of the movie, it represents that Gotham's violent and inequitable society has reached its maximum, and Arthur definitely feels it. We also see the scenes being dominated with the blue when Arthur watches a TV, obviously for the reason that TV is supposed to show what's happening in the outside world, and most of the time, the worst parts of it.
The city is under siege by scores of rats.
Therefore, the intensity of blue light in those moments is especially high. There is one specific scene that demonstrates these points of view the best. Remember when Arthur was watching a Murray show with his mom and suddenly he imagines himself participating in it and speaking with Murray? In the beginning, all visitors, including Arthur, sit in the dark of a blue. However, when Arthur stands up and gives a speech about his purpose and life and self-sacrifice for his mother, we see him standing in front of the rest of the people hidden in the shadow tilted blue. For us, the audience, it signifies the importance of this moment for Arthur. He isn't pushed down by the surrounding blue color, but instead stands above it, while others are not even seen in the dark shadow. In his imagination, Arthur finally defeats the violence he feels from society. But even more important is the fact that we can treat Murray as the face of Gotham City, and that's why he wears a blue costume. It means that the act of hugging between Arthur and Murray isn't just a desire for being loved, but also Arthur's dream of being accepted by the society. As we can see in the next shot, those dreams are cruelly crushed, with Arthur coming back down to earth, back to his room, filled up with very saturated, intense blue colors. Arthur realized that he will never be accepted by the others. The second important color in the movie is red. We don't usually see it, only under specific circumstances, and that's because it represents love, passion and healing power for Arthur. In other words, red dominates in a scene only and only when Arthur feels himself kind of happy, or at least as a normal life being. A little boy that was smiling on the bus was wearing a red jacket. Arthur made him laugh, and if you remember, that's what he believes his purpose in life is, to
Put a smile on my face.
Another character who is frequently wearing red outfits is Sophie, Arthur's neighbor. She was wearing a red jacket at least twice in the movie, and even if her outfit wasn't entirely red, it still had reddish elements mixed with others. That's because for Arthur, she was another person who fully understands him, who has a similar perspective, who is basically his love and healing power. Arthur's boss is also a person who had sympathy for him.
I like you, Arthur. You know, a lot of the guys, they think you're a freak, but I like you.
We can prove that he doesn't lie because he's also wearing red, and his office has a little but still red lamp. After all, he's the guy who gives Arthur the opportunity to be a clown, to make others smile, and at first he was a positive character.
The guy said you disappeared.
We've seen some red elements in the interior of Arthur's apartment. The red shadows combined with the red flowers on the wall of his mother's room, or the red wall of their bathroom. In both cases, Arthur wasn't alone, but with his lovely mother. Frankly, she really was the only real person that, as he thought, loved him, since Sophie was just an imagination. The very first and probably the only time when red color dominates the shot is the stage for stand-up comedians. This time we have a bunch of red lamps and different lights, and that's because for Arthur it's a peak of his comedian life. To some extent, that's when his main goal and dream was turned into reality. Everybody laughs, people have noticed him. In fact, I think only during these short moments audience can feel truly happy for Arthur. He's recognized, he's loved by Sophie. Also, it might be an exaggeration, it probably is, but the red hospital sign and ambulance are the proof that in Joker red color is a symbol of treatment and sanity, at least until its meaning drastically changes in the second part of a movie.
Why would you do that?
But we will come back to it later. Now let's talk about probably the most crucial color among the trio, the yellow color. This yellowish sodium vapor hue usually contrasts with the blue. As we already established in the beginning, Joker's movie is about society versus human, which means that since blue is a representation of society, yellow is Arthur's mind. One of the meanings of yellow is insanity, and here it's a symbol of Arthur losing his connection with the reality and his immersion into his insane mind.
Who do they think they are? I've given the best years of my life to this place and they think they can just fire me like that? Like trash? I don't think so.
SpongeBob? Is that you?
I've been waiting for you, Patrick!
The paradox is that this insanity is also his power, and when we see yellow in the movie, it's usually an indication of Arthur's resistance to society. A great example is the yellow sign at the beginning of the movie. Clearly contrasts with the cold tone of the street, and that's because it serves as Arthur's power. Those kids didn't just steal his sign, but they also broke it apart. Metaphorically, they destroyed Arthur's strength, leaving him powerless against the city violence. Besides the sign, Arthur usually wears a yellowish hoodie, which symbolizes his trial to hide from the outside world, and also him slowly going crazy in his mind. It also creates depth with a blue background and distinguishes Arthur from the society in the eyes of the viewers. Before we talked about his apartment and the fact that his shared scenes with his mother are tilted red. What about the rest of the scenes when Arthur is alone? As you can see, all the other parts of his house are dominated by yellow, and there is a simple reason for that. When Arthur is alone, it means he is alone with his mind. Of course, his apartment serves as a place where society can't reach him, but at the same time, it's a place where he continues to go insane. I mean, I don't think that if he treated his house as a place full of love, passion and healing, he would write those kinds of jokes. More importantly, there is a tendency for yellow to appear more and more frequently as Arthur becomes crazier. For instance, after killing 3 Wall Street Journal guys, Arthur comes to Sophie's apartment, kisses her, and enters the room full of saturated yellow light, signifying that he immerses into his insanity. The movie already prepares us for the twist at the end, when we discover that his relationships with Sophie were a part of his insane imagination. There are many other great uses of this color. For example, at the beginning of the movie we see the taxi almost hits Arthur, but then later during the police force chasing scene, taxi knocks him down, because at this point he already began his path into becoming a Joker. The yellow car hitting him is tantamount to insanity hitting his mind. Okay, now we talked about how those 3 colors serve to set a tone of the scene separately, but the real magic happens when all of them work together. We've already stated that in the first scene of the movie, the blue light coming out of the window is a society, so the yellow lights near the mirror are his powers. But mirrors are considered to be a reflection of a human soul, so what if I tell you that deep inside Arthur is an insane person? Joker already lives in him, and it is his hidden force. Next to the mirror, there are a bunch of large blue lockers, and in the movie, we can actually see Arthur's hoodie inside one of them. I'm not sure what do you think about it, but I see it as a symbol of society being the one ultimate power that keeps Arthur's strength locked away, especially considering that at least twice in the movie, Arthur was checking his mail lockers that were empty. Those represent Arthur's resistance, so by having nothing inside, we can tell that Arthur's power is also nothing compared to the society. Remember this kid wearing the red jacket? But did you notice that his mom, who says Arthur to
Stop bothering my kid.
is wearing blue, and once she turns her cat against Arthur, we don't see his red jacket in the scene anymore. Arthur can't have happiness unless a society like this surrounds him. Sometimes the transition between being exposed to society and being alone with his mind is instantaneous, as it was in this scene. When Arthur loudly laughs while being among his colleagues, but abruptly becomes serious and depressive once he is alone. Visually, this transition is illustrated with turning the environment around from blue into a yellow corridor. Just a moment later, the office room of his boss is shown in red tones, but once he starts to unfairly blame Arthur, we essentially see the rest of the room. Blue and yellow are dominated. So although his boss has something good inside of him, he is still the part of society as all the others. So when he fires Arthur from the job,
You're fired!
that was Arthur's only strength, he also takes away his power. And if we consider this small phone box to be a house where poor Arthur hides from the surrounding blue, then Arthur breaking the glass of it represents the fact that this time it's author himself who is guilty in the loss of his power. His mistake took away his job. Eventually, the external pressure breaks our main character and leads us to this scene, which I truly love. At this point in the movie, Arthur's already lost his job, his mom got into the hospital, and Thomas Wayne not just refused to accept Arthur, but revealed the potential truth about him and his mother. It seems as if all the remaining yellow colors, Arthur's remaining sources of power, are leaving the room, while his own apartment fills up with saturated blue. Am I the only one who gets satisfaction from this? Is it some kind of addiction? Arthur is shown to us half naked. He doesn't wear his usual yellowish hoodie because this realization broke him so much that he lost all his power. So every time when Arthur is shirtless, the film tells us how powerless he is at the moment. Therefore, the last thing that Arthur can do to escape and heal from insanity is to discover the real truth by going into Arkham Asylum. This medicine card of his mother is red because information hidden inside is, in fact, the last thing that could heal him. But once the true story is revealed, the medicine card's saturation fades away, it becomes faint. There is no more hope for Arthur. But the movie shows us what the result and truth will be even before Arthur gets the notebook. As we know, Arkham is the center of Gotham's insanity, and no wonder that its lifts and corridors are immersed into yellow colors. And here Arthur seems to be imprisoned and surrounded by yellow walls. We already know that whatever Arthur discovers here, it will not help him. Conversely, it's going to plunge him into full craziness and take away the last parts of reasonable Arthur.
What?
So, if this scene full of red was a peak for Arthur, and this one full of blue was his bottom, is there a scene full of yellow, and what would this scene mean for his character? The short answer is yes. I'm talking about the Wall Street Journal scene. So, just before this moment, Arthur was only getting punches from life, and it explains why cyan tones prevail over others in the first act of a movie. Red and yellow were appearing occasionally, and only for a short time, but then we see this. The train's blue lights are blinking as if they were losing control. It happens more, and once Arthur's anger reaches the peak, he kills those three guys and unleashes his inner insanity and power. Although it's already night, and we assume that shots should be color graded with blue, we see that streets suddenly turn extremely yellow, even mixed with some reddish shadows. The blue color was completely removed, justifying that now Arthur is in control of the situation and power. We already talked about complementary colors and the fact that the opposite of blue is orange. Wait, but we didn't talk about orange at all. That's true, unless you realize that orange is a combination of, yeah, you're right, red and yellow colors. Before, Arthur was never able to beat the influence of the external world because he was either using his insanity or his passion and love, not together, but separately. And when those two primary powers combine together, Arthur becomes all-powerful. He experiences the same feeling when he has a performance here, and also when he sneaks into the theater here. No surprise, he saw his followers, other clowns, he's happy to be inside, and even more happy and excited to meet his dad Thomas Wayne. But then he enters the bathroom, which is all yellow, and at this point Arthur is on edge of insanity and healing. Which one of them will dominate depends on the talk with Thomas. Unfortunately, as it was with an Arkham scene, when Arthur enters the bathroom, he takes off his red costume, and now he's again in his yellow hoodie. His meeting with Thomas is doomed to fail, even before they've started talking. Okay, great, but what happens when all three colors blend together? I'm glad that you asked. Well, you've probably noticed this. That's right, Joker's final outlook contains all three of them. And before we talk about his costume in detail, notice that the yellow underneath is between a red jacket and a blue shirt. This little detail is worth mentioning because every time Arthur first goes through the yellow. Don't believe me? Author goes through the yellow corridor before reaching the office of his boss. Author goes through the yellow corridor before reaching the stage where he performs as a stand-up comedian. Author goes under the yellow lighting of his house before meeting with his mom. Author passes the yellow walls of Arkham before finding the medicine card of his mother. Author runs through the yellow train station before the environment turns from blue to yellowish red. What it tells us as a viewers is that for Author, the only path to achieve true happiness lies through his insanity.
Yeah?
Ironically, it means that Arthur can be happy only and only when he is Joker. That's why the design of his costume is a masterpiece in terms of color choices. The inner layer is a blue shirt, which is a symbol of Arthur accepting that he will never belong to the society which surrounds him, so it doesn't have any impact on him anymore as it was in the beginning of the movie. The yellow underneath shows that Arthur embraced his insanity and it became the constant source of his powers. And finally, the red suit is him finding his healing through accepting that he is different and he always will be. Therefore, on Murray's show, we see how confident Arthur is when he passes the current painted by all three colors. And since red is a symbol of Arthur's healing, he murders Murray in front of a million viewers. This is a new meaning behind the red color that we didn't mention before, but it seems that blood is what Arthur sees as a solution, both for society, since he eradicates everyone who are awful, and himself. After all, it's not a coincidence that every time somebody dies, the blood ends up on Arthur's face. That's why Arthur's smile and clown face changes over time. In the beginning, his lips are slightly red, almost unseen, and the only thing we see is his tear. Then, the pomade on his lips can be seen more vividly, and finally, he draws a smile on his face with blood. He is finally cured. Now, there is still one thing that bothers me. It might be hard to distinguish Joker by any of these colors separately, but if someone shows you this image, you would immediately recognize the clown of a criminal world. So, what about green? Okay, I might be wrong, and if you are not agreed with me, that's fine, it's your right, but it seems that there were 3 times in the whole movie when suddenly the green was a dominant color. Here, here, and here. Did you notice what is common about those scenes? Yeah, you're right, all of them were when Arthur was dancing. Joker cinematographer Lawrence Sher said that for him, green color is a color of nature that evokes tension and serves as a transition for a character. And if you look at those scenes, again with that in mind, the importance of Arthur's dancing scenes drastically increases. He doesn't just perform a random act, no, his dances are pivotal moments of his life when his true nature goes through dramatic transformations.
I have to be something else.
The first dance happens immediately after killing Wall Street Journal bullies and just before he kisses Sophie and immerses into his insanity. And since we know that the mirror is a reflection of the human soul and true nature, we understand that Joker is Arthur's true nature, but it's just hidden inside of him. The next time we see green is during his transformation into Joker. He paints his hairs into green, the walls behind him are also green, but at this point he's still Arthur. Therefore, his last transformation needs something different, and this missing element is Thomas Wayne. Earlier in the movie, Arthur met Bruce, and although this scene was short, it was extremely important because it established the connection between Arthur and Bruce. Both of them are insane, and it's not my own made-up idea, no. The idea that Batman is as insane as Joker was shared in comics a long time ago at the end of Killing Joke comics. You've probably seen this iconic moment when Joker tells Batman the joke about 2 psychos, and both of them start hysterically laughing. If you didn't know, the point of this Killing Joke is to show that what makes Joker and Batman the same is their insanity, which they just use differently. So it's not a surprise that Bruce is wearing the yellow cloak, but what is important is that Arthur indeed died in an accident, as well as a young Bruce Wayne died when his parents were murdered. Instead, 2 other iconic characters were born, Joker and Batman. During the last dance, Arthur, who is now Joker, is surrounded by a cloud of green smoke. His final transformation was completed. At last, we see Joker sitting in the hospital. The whole room, as well as his outfit, is white. As we know, white is a union of all the other colors, so it means that now when author is Joker, he achieved his inner balance. Colors don't matter anymore. To some extent, his life is now a canvas, whereas he is a painter who decides which colors to use for his paintings. It proves that everything we've seen in the movie can be a total truth as well as a total lie. Only Joker himself knows what was real and what wasn't. But now the best part of it. Remember the scene when Joker tells his therapist that she wouldn't understand the joke? And when he thinks of this joke, we, for some reason, see the iconic Batman scene. Without paying attention to colors, it might seem that the only connection between Bruce and Arthur is their potential brotherhood and the fact that they're internal antagonists. But in this movie, it's not the only similarity. Actually, the movie tells us something more. It tells us that Bruce and Arthur aren't so different. Perhaps we all are not so different and, in fact, insane? Joker movie is incredible not because it has a great story of Joker, ironically, but because it clearly demonstrates how anyone, and I'm telling you absolutely anyone, can be awful. The same story could have happened to any other person, not just Arthur. After all, there was no radioactive spiders, random chemicals, or a green ring laying on the ground. No, it's a story of a human, any human, who was abandoned by others, and as a result, broken to the extent when only cold, indifferent and cruel behavior helps to survive. In other words, when the insanity breaks free. It just depends on an external impact or a random event, whether it's a story of a stand-up comedian who was abandoned by the society, or a story of a boy whose parents were murdered so he becomes a vigilante. This realization is what made Joker laugh at the end of the movie. He's not insane. Everyone is insane. This joke that most of us couldn't get. The killing joke. What do you think about the movie? Write your comments down below, click the like button, and if you are interested in similar videos, subscribe to the channel to not miss my other videos about Oscar nominees and more. So long and thanks for all the fish!